Alright, let me give you all a quick tutorial on how to do your brakes. I don't know why people are paying other people to do their brakes. Brakes are one of the easiest things you can do at home. Literally 4 tools, 30 minutes. You'll save hundreds of dollars and you can reinvest that money in more tools or equipment, whatever you want. So let's get down to it. Okay, 4 tools you need: impact wrench or tire iron, torque wrench, wrench to take your brakes off, and something to compress the caliper. Now, I prefer using a torque wrench. I have one, so I'm not going to use a tire iron. Plus, my tire iron doesn't even fit within these aftermarket wheels, so it's out the wayward. But the other thing I do need for these is I need an Allen key to be able to take off this hub cover. But let's get down to it. I'll take the hub cover off, and I'll just get the wheel off. You guys should know how to do that. If you don't know how to do that, start there. All right, got the wheel off. Now we got access to the brakes. Now, I recently put on new brake rotors because I have a bad squeak in the rear end. I thought it was my rotor that was warped, but it turns out it's these brakes. Now, I don't know if you can see, but this is the brake caliper and the brake pad is inside. The brake pads have these little retaining clips that help steady them within the caliper, help hold them into place. And I'm missing a number of them. Pretty sure these are the stock brakes. And so we're just going to get rid of them entirely. So my thought is this brake pad is sitting here, and as I'm going down the road, it's wobbling a little bit and squeaking. Plus, I just want to get rid of them. They're rusty. Out. So take the caliper off. It's super easy. Go on the back side. You've got 2 bolts. One there. One right there. So 2 bolts. Make sure you have a hand on it when you take it off. Otherwise, it's going to fall. It's going to put pressure on your brake line, so you don't want that. Always have a hand on the brake caliper or have something to retain it and hang it up that is shorter than your brake line. All right, so we got the caliper off. Super easy. It usually has a little bit of a grip on the rotor, so I'll just give it a little bit of pressure outwards. Don't assume that it's going to have pressure on the rotor. Always keep a hand on it. So you can inspect our brakes. Now, I mentioned the clip on the outside that you could see that's missing. There's also one on the inside that's missing. So that backs up my claim that just sitting there and wobbling, or the pad is wobbling. The rotor should never wobble. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the outer brake pad. Retainer came with it. Don't need that. And now, inside here is the piston. The piston is the piston, rides in and out. We need to compress that back in. So let me get set up. I only have 2 hands, and I only have 1 hand available. So let me get set up. I'll show you how we're going to compress that piston, but you'll want to leave this in its place. Okay, so this is what our setup looks like. So you want the clamp on the inside. Doesn't matter which orientation the clamp is in, as long as you're not putting pressure either on the banjo fitting or back here. There's the, not quite a zert fitting, but the drain for the brake line. So all we're going to do is we've got it snugged up, and all we're going to do is just tighten the clamp. It's a little bit hard with one hand, but it doesn't take much force at all. We're just going to recompress that piston all the way in to take up the slop for the new brakes. So I'm going to do that really quick, and I'll show you what it looks like after. All right, we've got the piston compressed all the way. You can see it's pushed all the way back inside. The brake pad is pushed all the way back inside the slot. And now we can remove this guy, get it out of the way, and then make sure all of your clips are removed, and we can reinstall the clips, or the new clips, and our pads. All right, so we got the inner pad installed. Now, this pad and most of your brake pads are going to have a wear indicator that when the pad rubs down, this will contact your rotor. It'll make a squeak sound. Rule of thumb for me, whenever I take my caliper off and it's sitting in this orientation facing me, the wear indicator always faces forward. The pad itself is rounded on the bottom, and that goes towards the outside of the caliper to match the contour of the rotor. The clips are directionally specific. There's a large end and a small end. Large end matches the large return on the brake caliper, and the small is on the bottom. There's also a small clip, and then a little focus, a larger clip on the outside. You get the point. Large clip goes on the outside. You don't want anything impeding the rotation of your brake rotor. So I'm going to get the outer one installed, or the outer pad installed rather, and I'll show you what the finished product looks like, but I'm sure you get an idea. Alright, so we've got both pads installed now. So if you did the proper job, the piston should be compressed all the way, leaving enough room in between the pads for your brake rotor. Let's see if I can do this one-handedly. Make sure not to twist your line when you go back in, but you should. Usually pretty snug. That's not working with one hand. Alright, I'm going to need two hands for this. Alright, caliper's installed. Two hands makes all the difference. So I've got one bolt just hand threaded in the top. That's holding it in place. So it still isn't quite tight yet. I'm going to get the other bolt threaded into the bottom. I don't have a torque spec for these, nor do I really have space on both sides to get a torque wrench. So I'm going to torque these by hand. It's nice and snug. Don't over torque them. It's not a bad idea to throw some anti-seize on the threads of this if you have it. But if you do your own brakes, you'll thank yourself. So I'm going to torque this down, hand tight, and reinstall the wheel. Okay, so in case you guys are curious what the torque spec is for this, I've got a just past hand tight, so it's on there. The torque spec is 1 grunt, so actually that's going to be a 2 grunt on this one. Yep, that's a 2 grunter. So I'm going to do the bottom one too. Do the 2 grunts. Perfect. That's a torque spec. Alright, they're torqued down, 2 grunts. Now, if you hadn't recently serviced your brakes, whether it be a rotor or brake pads, it's a good idea when you take your brake pads off to pull your rotor off. It's super easy. The only thing retaining your rotor is your brake caliper, and more importantly, your wheel when it's tightened. So go ahead, pull your rotor off. That'll get access to your emergency brake. You can inspect your emergency brake, make sure nothing's wrong with it. It's a good idea to clean it out. The emergency brake can collect a lot of debris when you're going off-roading, and you don't really want that grime sitting in there, and it'll make a nasty grinding sound when you're driving if you collect too much debris. So pull that out, clean it. I didn't do it in this video because I already recently did it, and I really just didn't want to pull it off because I'm also in a hurry, as you probably will be doing your own brakes. Alright, so now I've got my lug nuts. They're just finger tight, literally a few threads holding them on. So now I'm going to run them all down a little bit. You never want to actually tighten it initially, so I'm going to run it down. Because these are a tapered nut, and it's tapered against the wheel, these are going to suck the wheel centered. So you get this down, you'll see the wheel move. I'm going to move star pattern, so you can actually see my socket doesn't even fit because it's not quite in orientation yet. So I'm going to loosen that, lift up on the wheel a bit so I can get my socket in there. Wow, the focus on this is very bad, but now I'm going to give them just a little tap. The torque spec for this guy is 95 foot-pounds. With a little bit of impacting that I'm going to do isn't going to get us anywhere near a torque spec, but it's just to hold it in place. So I'm going to go through in a star pattern, just like I did. For the actual torque, I'm going to bring it about halfway to our torque spec, and then I'll go back through and I'll bring it all the way to our proper torque. So I'm going to start here, and I'll move in a star pattern, and then I'll go back, do one more time. Oop. And then I'm going to go in a circle. So a 3-step process, and that just ensures that all of my lug nuts are torqued properly. So starting there, back, and then in a circle. With only 5 lug nuts, it's not a huge deal to do it that many times. When you're doing a larger vehicle, I'm used to working on semi-trucks and things like that, which have way more lug nuts than you can count just with your visual eye. And when you do that, it's really easy to skip a lug nut. And so going back through in a circle after you're properly torqued, just to double check that you didn't miss one, is a very important step. All right, wheels properly torqued now. I highly suggest getting a torque wrench. You can do this with a tire iron, but invest in a torque wrench. This is a Harbor Freight torque wrench. This is the second one that I've owned, but not the second one that I've bought. Nice thing about Harbor Freight, lifetime warranty. They really don't ask any questions when you return it. The last one that I had, when I was using it, I noticed I lost one of these 2 screws or bolts that hold the head assembly together. Fell out. I thought about sourcing one, but I thought, hey, lifetime warranty, might as well take it back, see if I can exchange it. Literally no questions asked. This torque wrench is dirt cheap, but reliable. You can look up plenty of other YouTube videos as far as torque wrench testing, and most torque wrenches are pretty comparable. And so for the money, I highly suggest getting one of these. Graduations from up to 150. You never really want to push it all the way to the 150 mark, because once you get, I think it's the bottom, well, on the bottom scale and on the top scale, it's not as accurate. But everything in between, it's plenty accurate for what you'll likely be doing. Invest in a torque wrench. It's worth it in the long run. You'll thank yourself. All right, so we finished the brake job. I hope this inspired one of you guys to do your own brakes. I highly suggest doing it. When you get done, it's pretty gratifying knowing that you did the work, and that you can guarantee, as long as you have enough practice and you do enough research, that you know what you're doing and get it done right. Because every shop that you take it to isn't necessarily going to be as reliable as you likely think. So doing your own work, I highly suggest it. Now, the only downside to brakes is they're dirty. Brake jobs are pretty messy because your brakes, as they wear down, they create a lot of abrasive dust. And so that's really the only downside. But 30 minutes tops, you'll be done, at least with one set. If you're doing all 4 tires, it's going to be a little bit longer, but it's just as easy. Highly suggest doing it. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you later. What's my cat doing? He's trying to escape. I see him. I see you. Yeah, he's acting like I don't know. Ew. What the hell? Gross.